Frank Sellers is not a father. He does not deserve that title. He's never been a parent. He's a violent, alcoholic, child molesting monster. My entire life, he beat the shit out of me. Even Alice would have to try and interfere and tell him to stop because he would hit us so hard. And then if we cried, he'd hit us more for crying. That's not a parent. That's a child abuser. He would drink every single day. Or when he had friends until Alice ran all his friends off, he would be at bars drinking with them every night. Even Alice would call him an alcoholic. So we learned at a very young age that Frank was an alcoholic. Now he's tapered off a little bit in his older age. He became more of like a functional alcoholic instead of like, fully falling over and acting like a fucking asshole every day. Well, I mean, he still is that because only a fucking asshole beats the shit out of their kids and molests them and abducts their daughter's child and then abuses that child. Because, I was brave enough to get my son away from these abusive monsters. And instead of respecting that and knowing that I was doing the right thing, these assholes decided to stalk me and my son all over to the lower mainland to the point where we had to move to a city we'd never been to before, start a whole new life so we could stop living in fear, because I didn't want my child to know what this kind of abuse was and to not live in this kind of fear. And we were having to walk around with looking over our shoulders every day. But guess what? Lovely fucked up social workers told Alice and Frank where we were. And so Frank follows Alice's lead because the one thing she has right about him is that he's a coward. And he doesn't stand up for what's right or the truth. He just follows her lead because he's afraid of her. Because living with Alice, the Wicked Witch of West Vancouver, is like living in a cult. And they followed us all the way 10 hours away to Cranbrook and stalked us up there. They stalked the social worker's office up there to the point where they were terrified of Alice and Frank and said they'd make sure that they never had any access to my son, Austin. And Alice and Frank stalked my son's daycares. They stalked the hospitals and the doctor's offices. They made themselves known all over town, spreading lies about me and trying to demand our address so that they could abduct my child. They decided to file for full custody of my son, which they were awarded 0 access because they're abusive monsters. So when they stormed out of court, they threatened that they'd get Austin one way or another. And now all these years later, that's what they've done. They've used their money and their power and their lies to have my child abducted. And my son has not been seen or heard from in 44 months. None of his friends or family have seen him. Now, if what they were doing was right and he was in a safe place, then why is it that Austin's being held hostage? That he's not allowed to see or speak to anybody he's known in his entire life. Because he's being held hostage from the truth. Because Alice and Frank don't want him to know the truth about anything that's happened to him. And Frank won't stand up for the truth because that would mean standing up against Alice, who he's afraid of. Because he's not even allowed out of his bedroom. Because even though he beat the shit out of us and he was an abusive asshole and he beats up Alice, somewhere along the lines, when we were young, Alice got her mojo of learning from Frank and started beating us too. And beating up on Frank. And the hours and hours and hours of her standing there and berating you and calling you names and telling you how much of a shit person you are is such mental torture that he's so afraid of her that he won't divorce her. Even Helmut has asked Frank why he won't leave Alice or why he won't report her, why he won't get help, because nobody can stand to live in that hell. Frank is a battered husband who's not allowed out of his room unless he's gonna work. And when Alice would attack us for hours, and even when I was pregnant and she's beating me while I was pregnant, or when I was holding my infant child and she was beating me, Frank would stand there watching or go hide in his room, because it's all about self-preservation, not about standing up for your kids and the truth and doing what's right. So imagine what's happening to Austin now when Alice goes on her rampages and tells him how much she doesn't want him and how much she hates him and how much he's ruined her life. Now she's going to send him to Austria, and how much I supposedly don't love him, because these are the lies and brainwashing she tells him. I even have the emails she sent me of how much she hates my child and how much she doesn't want him and how she's going to send him away because she can't stand him. But Frank won't stand up against Alice for the truth because he's too afraid of losing money in a divorce. Guess what, you fucker? What do you think my kid's going to do when he's old enough to tell the truth? If he doesn't kill himself from the guilt of finding out how he was used as a weapon in this sick, mentally ill war you monsters have caused, then he's going to sue you for all the money you have, for the fact that you've abused him so severely and lied to him about me and abducted him from his entire life, and how you've molested him. Yeah, I know what you did to me. And just like I caught you in the shower with Austin in Hawaii, and you want to deny that you're a bad person. You're a monster. You're not a parent. You're a vile, disgusting monster. You won't stand up against your mentally ill wife to protect your children, and you damage your children in your own ways because you're a violent, alcoholic child molester. You are not a parent.